Hey guys, welcome back to Epicenter Garage. Today is going to be a fun day because we're going to take some cars out. But first, today I got a few fun things in, well, insurance cars. So we got 70 Haggerty insurance cars, and I promise you I'm not going to bore you like I did with the license plate and put these in all the cars. So that's going to be something I'm going to do tonight. What I did get in, I got a couple things in. One, I got some parts in for our project car, so you really can't tell what those are probably for, so I can show you those, but multiple parts there. And I did, kind of a big thing for me is I got a new helmet. I had to get a new helmet because like I said before in the last episode was that a lot of my stuff, the safety stuff, is timing out. Most things, I think it's helmets, I can't remember. I think this was my old helmet here was a Snell 2010, which I think they're good for 10 years at least, depending on the racing organization. And I have my older helmet here, and I got a brand new Race Quip helmet, which I got it in, I was really excited, and then it just did, both my helmets are 7 3/8 size, and these should be the same. This one fits pretty snug, this one fits a little bit loose, so I had to get on, and I have some other little foam padding things I'm gonna put in here, and then I gotta hook up the Hans. I gotta take the things off, the Hans deals off of this and put it on here, so. Yeah, I mean, I got all excited, and then as soon as I put it on, I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's like getting a new baseball glove. It's just not quite the same. You gotta have to kind of break it in a little bit. So, but now to the more exciting part than helmets and insurance cards. I've got a couple cars over here. Now, you guys have seen the green 73 RSR. I don't think I've shown you the backdated green 87. Well, let me back up. A 1987 911 Carrera that we backdated to look like a 73 RSR. So 2 green cars, both of them Viper green. Let me tell you about them. All right, what we have here are 2 Viper green 1973 Porsche 911 RSRs. Let me back up. That's not really what we have. What we actually have here, they look like 73 RSRs, but what we actually have here is a 72. You started out with a Sportmatic transmission, canary yellow. That's the way it left the factory with a 2.4 liter flat 6. It was a 911T with a Sportmatic, was not necessarily the hot rod of the day. This one left the factory as a 1987 911 Carrera with, of course, at that time they had G50 gearboxes in them, which is the most awesome gearbox ever built by Porsche, and the 3.2 liter fuel injected flat 6. So these cars, although they look very similar, are the exact same color, Viper green. They couldn't be more different. So this one I built as a 72, let me back up, into a 73 RSR, but like I said, it started out as a 72. This one was built to vintage race in Group 8, depending on the racing organization, but primarily Road America, HSR, things like that. This would run in Group 8. Run against, Datsun 260s, 280Zs, BMWs, a host of cars that were comparable to this car. This one was completely stripped down. It was a rust bucket, and if you guys watched the previous episode, I kind of talked about the front and the back and went over the car a little bit, but it was a complete rust bucket. I bought this car from my cousin's husband that had owned it for 20 years, sat in his garage, has boxes stacked all over it, and I had been trying to buy it from him for a long time. He, of course, had grandiose plans for it, which unfortunately fortunate for me, that never took place. So I bought it, went through the entire car, stripped it all down, complete rotisserie. I say restoration, it really wasn't a restoration, it was just a conversion into a race car. And it has a 3.2 liter flat 6 in it with 46 PMO carbs. And when I say PMO, most of these cars, when they came from the factory, they had a couple different types of carburetors. But PMOs are primarily used for vintage cars or race cars. Great carburetors, a lot simpler than, let's say, your standard Webers, things like that. And they'll make more horsepower as well. Now this one, like I said, started out, left the factory as an 87 Carrera with the 3.2 G50 gearbox. When this one started out, it was silver. I'm not sure the exact, you Porsche fanatics out there would know probably this type of silver I'm talking about. I think they had maybe 2 or 3 different types of silver. So this is what this car started out as, a silver 87. Completely gutted it, went through the entire car, put steel, actually this one has steel flares on it, so butt welded or welded on the flares, went through the whole car. It was, I want to say, about 160,000 miles on it, and it had some rust issues. It spent its time in Chicago, which is not the most friendly place for a Porsche, especially in wintertime driving around those streets. Now what we'll do is we'll dive a little bit more into these cars. And when I say these cars can't be more different, they drive complete opposite ends of the spectrum. This one, like I said before, this one was built, it's a lot more compliant, nearly stock suspension. And we'll put it up on the lip eventually in a future episode, and I'll really dig into this. If any of you guys are out there are wanting to build or duplicate a car or backdate a car, we'll do a deep dive into it. But as you can see here, we do have the oil cooler up front. We have the standard 73 RS lip. Over here, we've got, and you can tell here, both of these cars are this car doesn't really look like it right off the bat, but it is considerably lower and much lighter. This car weighs roughly about 2,000 pounds, 2,100 pounds. Well, this one hits the scales right around 2,600 pounds. So about 500-600 pounds difference between these two. So you can see here a little bit different turn signals, difference between Euro cars and US cars. And honestly, I just want to have them have a little bit different look. And of course, we have the splitter here, which of course, on the track, it helps with downforce and keeps the front end planted. We have a tow hook, and then we'll also get into the front, and I can tell you a little bit about kind of under the front bonnet, the differences there. So in a previous episode, I'm going to go through this pretty quick. I went through the front of this car just a little bit because I just got done servicing this car, changed all the oil, bled the brakes, did anything it needs to do, nut and bolt check, because I've been driving this on the street. I had it for a while, and so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of go through it. It had been sitting for a month or two. So what we have here, we have a 12-gallon race tank filler that actually goes through the hoods for quick pit stops, and we have our oil overflow here, and then we have our main oil tank here. And so unlike street Porsches, this tank is in the front, where in a street one it's actually back behind the passenger wheel, and of course it's, I don't say molded, but bent to fit the behind the rear wheel, whereas this is a much higher capacity. So in a race situation, I mean, these cars are considered air-cooled, but in reality, they're oil-cooled. They hold a ton of oil. Anybody who has a 911 out there who's changed their oil on an early 911, you know what I'm talking about. And this one holds, and I actually have a deal here. This one holds probably right around 11 and 12 quarts. So quite a bit of oil. And of course, then you have all the lines, and one of the things is the capacity, is because you have all the lines coming from here, from the front to the oil cooler all the way around. I bet probably in the lines alone, there's probably, oh my gosh, there's probably 3 or 4 quarts just in the oil lines. So now let's go ahead and open this one up. Now you'll see here, one of the things we incorporate in this car is that I take this car on a lot of trips. I've been on various rallies and so forth. And so you have the look of, I love this look of the hood straps, but at the same time, when you're going on a long trip, you're going to have, I don't want to call them valuables. I have no valuables, but you're going to have stuff under the bonnet. And one of the things we did is you can notice on that other car where I can just immediately pull this up. No, what we did is we took this hood and we were actually able to keep the locking mechanism. So now I'm going to go around and actually unlock this. Although that was pretty complicated under the hood, this one has some pretty cool features. So let me move my towels because I don't have a carpet kit, so I Walmart black towels here. So here we have, just like a normal 87, 88 Carrera, or even earlier than that, you've got your spare tire. I did go ahead and take out the filler up on the side right here, and so we went ahead and built one to go through the hood, which I think is pretty cool. Of course, a nice seal around here because this one, I'll drive it in rain, all kinds of weather. Many instances, this is my daily driver in a lot of, in the fall and even in the springtime, I drive this car constantly. Up here, it's fully electric air conditioning system. And the one from the factory, this company that makes it, I believe it's called Ren Air. It's okay. I needed to modify it. The blower that they use in these units is not awesome. And so what we did is we built, or actually allocated an additional blower here that I can control from the driver's position. It just moves a lot more air and makes it a lot more comfortable. But everything else is pretty much stock. This is the stock tank that we actually welded right here in order for it to come up through the hood. And of course, strut tower bar here and welded that that system in. And of course, we do have the oil cooler here, just like in the race cars, and so the air can come through the front, and it has a place to go. It's just not flat up against the front, and it does really help the temperatures be able to pull and suck that air through. So here we are at the business end of both of these cars, or this one in particular. So I'll undo this one. And if you, like I said, if you watched one of the previous episodes, I talked and I went into this engine a little bit, but not too in depth. This is a 3.2 liter, basically the same engine that they would put in that Carrera over there. But this is a twin plug, and what that basically means is there's two spark plugs per cylinder. And of course, then you have to have, you know, 2 spark plugs or spark plug wires going to each one. It's got 12 plugs. This one has 46 PMOs, so these are the PMO carburetors, they're not the original Webers. So produce a lot more horsepower, carbureted engine, higher compression ratio. I didn't go so high that I have to always run race fuel, but I can run race gas in this, but most of the time I run 92, 93 octane. Primarily, I like cars that you can drive on the street, because the thing is, and I go on a rant here, the thing is about these cars, when you spend this kind of money on a car, especially when they're full-on race car, say you spend $100,000 or more on a race car, you know, I don't get to vintage race as much as I'd like to, and so every time you go out and I want to enjoy that car, honestly, if you only drive it 2 or 3 times a year, that really, really stinks. So I quickly learned, I'm like, well, I want to enjoy this car any day I want to. If it's a nice day outside, I want to take it out. That's my plan when it comes to building cars now. So now I build a street car that I can vintage race. Red line in this engine is about 7,500, 7,800. It produces about 275 to 280 horsepower. And this is, I want to say it's backed up by, but actually it's in front, is a 915 gearbox with a little shorter ratios up front, but it still has a fairly tall 5th gear to be able to go on the highway and not, you know, be running well over 4,000 RPM like a lot of race 915 gearboxes do. This one actually also has a locking mechanism. So as I pull this down, I can't immediately pull this up, so I need to go around to the driver's side and pop this lid. So here we've got this one, and this engine now is this, if you guys have an 84 to 89 911, this probably looks fairly familiar to you. A little more simplified. I don't have the heater blower system here. I do not have the AC because, like I showed you before up front, it has an electric AC system in it, or electric air conditioner. This, of course, has your standard injection, all that type of stuff. It does. The only thing I've done to this is it does have a Steve Long chip that's been programmed for the exhaust system and the fuel that I'm running, which is 91 to 93 octane. Stock airbox, but the holes, I have drilled the holes out on the side, get a little bit more flow there. And other than that, it's fairly stock. I did go through, and obviously I went through the entire engine, and the engine has been completely rebuilt. And so a little bit better components, pistons, things like that. But other than that, it's pretty stock. Horsepower-wise, I want to say the 3.2 is completely stock. My memory is kind of going on me. Probably right around 218, 220 horsepower. I'm guessing this one's probably right around 240, 245, right around there. But when we race them side by side with several other ones that I have, this one lags behind just a bit, where the other ones pull off, they have more torque, and then all of a sudden, boom. I think the headers kick in, the higher RPM, and this thing's gone. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of show you the difference in the exhaust, because that makes these cars sound, obviously the intake carburetor versus fuel injection makes a difference, but these cars, when you're driving them, you primarily hear exhaust noise, and I'm going to show you why. This car is one of my favorite sounding cars out of all the cars that I own. So the headers come straight back. So as they go through here, we have little tiny mufflers just to kind of quiet it down. It kind of knocks the drone down. So the real magic happens right here, where it brings both sides into, well, both pipes into one. So what happens is when the gases come through here, they scavenge a little better, help pull from both sides. And just when you get those tones coming through and they mix together, the sound is just insane. So here we are under the 72 that's, I guess you'd call it front dated, right? I've never even heard of that. But so here we are under the 72. It's been front dated to the 73. So you have, obviously, the left bank, all 3 cylinders pumping exhaust out of this one. Megaphone, because it's kind of narrow, and it slowly gets larger and larger and larger. And then, of course, the right side over here. And the interesting thing is when a lot of times you would have these crack. And on my race car, my 74 that I actually race, I've drug around one of these pipes all the way around the track, because what happens is the resonant frequency, it gets to vibrating, it just whoom, and then at a certain RPM, I would say 62, depending on the engine, but on a 3.6 or a 3.8, the resonant frequency is just, I mean, they'll break wells, or everything, all kinds of things. So you can see here, you can move these pipes around, and of course these will flex a little bit, and I've actually beefed this one up. I welded a little stiffer. Usually these are round, but I put a flat plate right here as well to try to stiffen that up, because they really shake. Now, we have raced these things against one another, and there really is no contest. I mean, this thing will just walk away. And of course, horsepower and 500-600 pounds difference between these two cars, it's not even a race. It sounds awesome, but it's not a race. Those of you that have an 84 to 89, well, even earlier than that, this interior looks probably very, very familiar. Stock gauges, stock dash. The interesting thing is, a lot of 911s, you had so many options. Even in the 80s, you could get the leather dash, you get the plastic dash. Those might have been only two options, but different deviated stitching. But I'm just a huge fan of the plastic dash. You don't have to worry about it. It's not going to warp. It's not going to, the leather's not going to start shrinking it up and pulling it different places. So I love, I don't know if it's, it is plastic or fiberglass. And of course, I've got all stock gauges. I've gone through and kind of rebuilt, I want to say, the tack I had to do. Even the clock, a lot of the clocks stopped working, so this clock now is back working. I did buy an older school steering wheel. These are kind of, I don't want to say new old stock, but brand new to make them look like the older original ones. And of course, then the center cap here, I call them center cap, but center cover, which is ridiculous because this center cover right here costs as much as this freaking steering wheel, which is nuts. I did not want to pay. I think this was probably right around $200, maybe $300. And I'm cheap to begin with, but I was like, oh my gosh, do I really want to spend that kind of money? But it is something that you stare at all the time. It's right in front of you whenever you're driving this car. So I bit the bullet and bought it, and I'm glad that I did. The best part on this car is the fact that it does have electric air conditioning. It does have the G50 gearbox, which is just, many of you might disagree with me, but the G50 gearbox, you can just shift without thinking. You can do that in the 915 as well, but it's when you're racing or you're really driving hard, having a gearbox a smooth gearbox like the G50 is just fantastic. I did redo the seats. You might recognize these seats are basically stock seats. Refinished them. Put the houndstooth down the center, and then of course for my son and anybody else that rides along, we did the back as well. And friends and family have thoroughly enjoyed this car. We've taken it over to Arkansas. We've gone on long drives, road trips, and it has never failed me. This one really gave me the backdating bug, and now I just can't stop. So those of you out there that don't like backdated cars, I'm really sorry. I just love them. I absolutely love them. As you can hear, these doors don't close like your normal funk. They kind of have a little bit of rattle afterwards, and of course that's a race car talking to you, right? So this car immediately feels, obviously racy, but immediately feels lighter for whatever reason, and maybe it's, just simply because it is a lighter car, but you have plastic dash, which is kind of, I don't want to say rickety, but very, very thin. Blow molded dash, I should say, to keep everything lightweight. We have aluminum panels on the front, and only the things that you need to go down the road and make sure that everything is running properly. Here I have the option, I can take this seat out and I have a cool suit system that you can also run in this car. So here the auxiliary is actually a fan for the helmet to blow cool air into your helmet. And then of course you have your cool to be able to power your cool, your big, well it's like an ice chest with water that runs water through your cool shirt. Fuse is here, start button, your fuel, and your ignition. All basically the three things that you need. You need fuel, ignition, and you'll be able to click it on and start. This is your your alternator light right here. You always want to make sure when that thing comes on, you want to bring it in because you're not going to be running much longer, your battery and so forth. Speedometer, a lot of times race cars don't have speedometers, but I drive this on the street all the time. On these tacks, I always rotate them. In race cars, you always rotate them because you got to pay attention when you're driving. You don't really have time to look and see when you're shifting. This way you can just glance at it when the needle hits the top. When you see it go in, boom, you know when to shift. And of course, then you have your pressure, your oil pressure, your fuel, and then of course your oil level. But it is a bare bones car. This does have wipers, so you have wipers right here. They are only one speed, and you have to click them. Whoop, hold on here. Oh, hold on, whoa, right there. Which is ridiculous. You would think they'd have stops, but they don't. And of course, then you have your lights right here. You've got high and low. And then you have your turn signals left and right here. And so you actually have the windows you can pull up. So you pull them up with the strap, then you re-snap the buttons down here, and that is your window system. So now putting it down is a little different. There we go. Slide it down and clip it back in. And this is your door release right here. Boom. Pretty bare bones. And of course, this one has a full cage, which full cages in these cars, 911s are already, the structure's already so stiff, but oh my gosh, you can tell as soon as you bolt the cage in and it ties all the way to the front, all the way to the rear cross member, it makes these cars just feel like they're one solid block of steel or aluminum. Well, thanks for watching, and catch us next time. And make sure if you want to watch additional episodes, make sure you subscribe. And we're always on to other projects, so make sure you stay tuned. We'll see you soon.